Howdy, folks. Now, I got a question for you. What do you get when you cross a wounded tank driver, a hospital bed full of complaints, and the kind of engineering genius that'll make John Moses Browning tip his hat? Well, what you get is the most recognizable rifle silhouette on planet Earth. Story so wild it reads like something straight out of a Cold War thriller. We're talking, of course, about the AK-47, folks. The rifle that's been in more movies than Tom Cruise, caused more political headaches than a Twitter scandal, X, and somehow managed to become both the symbol of revolution and a testament to good old-fashioned engineering. But here's the crazy part. It all started with a 19-year-old farm boy who just wanted to help his buddies stop complaining about their busted rifles. So it's 1919, and somewhere in the frozen wasteland of what would become the Soviet Union, a baby boy is born to a family so poor they make church mice look wealthy. This kid, Mikhail Kalashnikov, was the 17th child. Not 7th, not 10th, 17th. Now, most kids born in that kind of poverty might just accept their lot in life, but not young Mikhail. This boy had something special burning inside him, a combination of mechanical genius and pure stubborn determination that'd make a Texas mule look flexible. Growing up in Siberia, Mikhail learned two things real quick. First, if something breaks, you better know how to fix it, because ain't nobody coming to help. Second, when you're hunting to put food on the table for 18 other people, your rifle better work every single time or your family's gonna go hungry. This kid was tinkering with machinery before most of us learned how to tie our shoes. He'd take apart his father's hunting rifle just to see how it worked, then put it together better than it was before. His neighbors thought he was just touched in the head, but Mikhail, he was just getting started. Now fast forward a little bit here to 1938, and Mikhail is 19 years old. Uncle Stalin comes knocking with a conscription notice. Now most farm boys might be terrified of military service, but Mikhail saw it as an opportunity. He gets assigned to the 24th Tank Regiment, and suddenly his mechanical genius is surrounded by the most advanced military hardware the Soviet Union has got to offer. Here's where the story gets a little interesting. It's now 1941, and Hitler decides that he wants to take a little vacation in Russia. Operation Barbarossa kicks off, and suddenly Mikhail finds himself face to face with a German war machine. During the Battle of Bryansk, Mikhail's tank takes a hit. Shrapnel tears through his shoulder, and he ends up in a military hospital, wounded and frustrated. But here's the thing about hospital beds, they give you a lot of time to think and even more time to listen. And what Mikhail heard from his fellow soldiers was enough to make his blood boil. These brave men fighting for their homeland were stuck with rifles that jammed more often than a broken record player. The standard issue weapons were unreliable, heavy, and about as effective in combat as a screen door on a submarine. Now, most people would just complain and move on, but Mikhail Kalashnikov wasn't most people. Lying in that hospital bed, listening to his comrades grap about their weapons, he made a decision that would change the world. He was going to design a rifle that would never let a Russian soldier down again. So this wounded tank driver with no formal engineering education decides he's going to outdesign the entire Soviet weapons establishment. Sounds crazy, right? Well, crazy like a fox, because Mikhail didn't. He had something those fancy engineers didn't have, all right? He understood what soldiers actually needed in combat. Now, while the Germans were building precision instruments and the Americans were over here crafting beautiful pieces of machinery, I might add, Mikhail was thinking about something very different. He was thinking about a 19-year-old conscript from a farm who'd never seen a rifle before being drafted. He was thinking about fighting in mud, snow, sand, and conditions that'd make a Swiss watchmaker weep. His philosophy was pretty simple here. Build a rifle so reliable, so simple, so foolproof that it would work when everything else failed. And folks, that's exactly what he did. See, in 1946, the Soviet military held a competition for a new assault rifle. Now keep in mind, you had established weapons manufacturers with decades of experience, teams of engineers, and unlimited budgets all throwing their hats in the ring. Then, you had Mikhail Kalashnikov, still basically a kid with his prototype that he'd been tinkering with in his spare time. Competition was fierce. We're talking about the future Soviet infantry weapons here. But when the smoke cleared and the testing was done, there was only one rifle that was left standing, Mikhail's design. And the Automat Kalashnikova Model 1947 became the AK-47. Now let's just talk about what made this rifle so special, because it wasn't just luck that made the AK-47 a legend. Mikhail engineered this thing with the precision of a Swiss watch and the durability of a farm tractor. First, let's talk about the gas system. Most rifles at the time used short-stroke gas pistons. Fancy, precise, and about as reliable as a politician's promise, so Mikhail said nope, and went with a long-stroke gas piston system instead. This thing was so over-engineered for reliability that it could cycle with enough force to power a small generator. The bold design? Pure genius. While other rifles had tight tolerances that required precision manufacturing, the AK-47 had generous clearances between moving parts. This meant that when mud, sand, or ice got into the action, and in combat it will, this rifle kept on working. And let's not forget about that 7.62 by 39mm cartridge. This wasn't just any old bullet. This was an intermediate cartridge, more powerful than a pistol round but not as heavy as a full rifle one, so it gave soldiers the perfect balance between stopping power and controllability. At 715 meters per second, this 16.3 gram projectile could punch through car doors, heavy foliage, and even walls. But here's the extra spice. It was designed to stay intact when it hits a target. No fragmentation, no fancy hollow points, just good old-fashioned kinetic energy doing the job. But that ain't it. The real genius of the AK-47 wasn't in its design, it was how it could be manufactured. While American rifles required that precision machining and skilled craftsmen, the AK-47 was designed to be built by anyone with basic metalworking skills. The early models used machined receivers, but when production ramped up, they switched to stamped sheet metal. This wasn't a cost-cutting measure, it was brilliant engineering. Stamped receivers were actually lighter, faster to produce, and just as strong as the machined ones. Now, Mikhail wasn't the type to just rest on his laurels neither. The AK-47 was just the beginning of what would become a whole family of rifles. In 1959, the Soviets introduced the AK-M, the M standing for modernized in Russian. This wasn't just a minor update here neither, folks. This was the AK-47 taken to the next level. The AK-M featured a stamped sheet metal receiver I mentioned, making it about 66% of the weight of the original AK-47. They added a slanted muzzle brake to help control the upward recoil, because let's face it, the AK family has always been a little enthusiastic about climbing skyward when you hold down that trigger. They also added a hammer retarder to prevent the rifle from firing when the bolt wasn't fully closed. This might sound like a small detail, but in happy mode, I can't say the other thing, it was the difference between controlled bursts and uncontrolled chaos, alright? But old Mikhail wasn't done innovating here. In 1974, he introduced the AK-74, chambered in 5.45 by 39mm. This smaller, faster cartridge was the Soviet answer to the American 5.56 NATO round. It had better accuracy at longer ranges and created more devastating wound channels despite its smaller size. The AK-74 kept all the reliability of its bigger brother, but added improved accuracy and reduced recoil. It was the perfect evolution of the AK platform. But here's where the story gets interesting, folks. The AK-47 didn't just stay in Russia. No, this rifle had much bigger plans. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union and China started handing out AK-47s like party favors. Every communist ally, every revolutionary movement, every group that opposed the West suddenly found themselves armed with these reliable and effective rifles. While American forces were carrying expensive precision-built M14s and M16s, their opponents were using rifles that cost a fraction of the price but were just as deadly. Like bringing a Rolex to a fight where the other guy's got a Timex that never stops ticking. And the numbers, folks, they were staggering. We're talking about an estimated 100 million Kalashnikov pattern rifles in circulation worldwide. That's roughly one AK for every 75 people on Earth. Of those, about 75 million are original AK-47s or AKMs. Put that into perspective, that's more rifles than the entire population of Germany. More rifles than there are pickup trucks in Texas. It's a number so big it's almost impossible to comprehend. But here is where things get dark, folks. The very reliability and simplicity that made the AK-47 perfect for soldiers also made it perfect for less savory characters. In some parts of the world, you can buy an AK-47 for the price of a decent dinner. In Somalia, Rwanda, and the Congo, these rifles have flooded the black market too. We're talking about $45 to $150 for a rifle that can change the balance of power in an entire region. In Kenya, 5-headed cattle will get you an AK-47. In some places, the price of a single chicken. But the AK-47 became more than just a weapon. It became a symbol. Depending on where you're standing, it symbolizes very different things. For revolutionary movements around the world, the AK-47 became the great equalizer. Didn't matter if you were facing a professional army with advanced equipment, You had an AK-47, you actually stood a fighting chance. From the jungles of Vietnam to the mountains of Afghanistan, from the streets of Beirut to the deserts of Africa, the distinctive silhouette of the AK-47 became synonymous with resistance, revolution, and rebellion. In the Western world, particularly in America, the AK-47 took on a much different meaning. It became the bad guy's gun. Every action movie, every news report about terrorism, every story about conflict in far-off places seemed to feature the AK-47. Now, this wasn't entirely fair to the rifle or its creator, but perception became reality. The AK-47 was the weapon of choice for everyone America was fighting against, from Soviet soldiers to Middle Eastern extremists. But in Russia, the AK-47 is a source of immense national pride. It represents Russian engineering, Russian ingenuity, and Russian determination. Mikhail Kalashnikov is remembered not as a weapons designer, but as a patriot who helped defend his homeland. So speaking of him, let's talk about Mikhail Kalashnikov himself, because this story ain't just about a rifle, it's about the man who created it. Here's something that might surprise you. He was actually a poet. This man who created one of the most feared weapons in history was also a published poet who wrote 6 books. He was a lifelong learner, tinkerer, and a man who genuinely cared about his community. See, throughout his life, Mikhail never made a direct profit from his rifle design. Communism, yeah, duh. But in the Soviet system, his invention belonged to the state, you see? While American gun designers became millionaires, Mikhail lived on a modest pension and the satisfaction of knowing that he'd helped defend his country. But success came with a price. As Mikhail aged and saw how his creation was being used around the world, he began to struggle with the moral implications of his invention. 6 months before his death in 2013, he wrote a letter to the Russian Orthodox Church asking if he was to blame for the deaths caused by his rifle. The church's response was clear. Mikhail had created the AK-47 to defend his homeland, and that was a noble purpose. The misuse of his invention by others was not his responsibility. When Mikhail Kalashnikov died at the age of 94, he was buried with full military honors. His list of awards and achievements read like who's who of Russian recognition: Hero of the Russian Federation, Order of St. Andrew, Order of the Red Star, and countless others. There are statues and monuments to him across Russia. State Technical University bears his name. But perhaps the greatest monument to Mikhail Kalashnikov is the rifle itself. Still in production, still reliable, still serving soldiers around the world more than 75 years after his creation. So where does that leave us today, folks? What's the legacy of the AK-47 in our modern world? Well, the AK platform's still evolving. Modern variants like the AK-12 incorporate 21st century technology while maintaining the core reliability that made the original famous. These new rifles have improved ergonomics, better accuracy, and the ability to mount modern optics and accessories. But at their heart, they're still based on Mikhail's original design philosophy. Build it simple, build it strong, build it to work when everything else fails. Here in America, our relationship with the AK is complicated. We respect its engineering and reliability, but we can't forget that for decades, it was pointed at American soldiers. It's a rifle that represents everything we fought against during the Cold War. Yet, American shooters have embraced AK pattern rifles for their reliability and effectiveness. You can walk into gun stores across America and find AK variants built by American companies, proving that good engineering transcends politics. And here's the ultimate irony. The rifle designed by communists to fight capitalism has become one of the most successful capitalist products in history. The AK-47s and their variants are manufactured in dozens of countries, generating billions of dollars in revenue. From high-end American-made versions costing thousands of dollars to basic models that can be had for a few hundred, the AK platform has proven that Mikhail's design was truly universal. Mikhail Kalashnikov set out to build a better rifle for his fellow soldiers and his family. But what he created was a weapon that would reshape warfare, influence global politics, and become one of the most recognizable objects on planet Earth. Now, if you enjoyed learning about the rifle that changed everything, hit that like button harder than an AK bolt slamming home. Subscribe for more deep dives into firearms that shaped our world, and drop a comment below. Tell me, what are your thoughts on the AK-47's legacy? Until next time, keep your powder dry, your groups tight, and remember, Sometimes the most revolutionary ideas come from the most unexpected places. Y'all come back now, you hear?